The member of parliament at the center of reporting on allegations of Chinese government election interference is suing Global News. Toronto MP Han Dong tweeted a letter from his lawyer last evening outlining a statement of claim seeking $15 million in damages for libel. Last month, Global News published a story citing two anonymous national security sources, and they allege that Dong advised a senior Chinese diplomat in February of 2021 that Beijing should hold off on freeing Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor because that release could benefit conservatives. The statement of claim calls that story and a prior report from Global that alleged the Prime Minister had been briefed in 2019 that Dong was part of a Chinese foreign interference network false and defamatory. All right, we're going to bring in the Friday Power Panel on this. Nigan Sinclair is a columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press and a professor of Indigenous Studies at the University of Manitoba. Emily Nicolas is a columnist with Le Devoir in Montreal. And here with me in studio, Marie Vastel is a parliamentary reporter with Le Devoir, and Tonda McCharles is the Toronto Star's Ottawa bureau chief. Happy Friday, gang.
Hi. Hey,
good to see you. Tonda, all right, we're going to start. You're a bureau chief, so we'll start with you on this one. We asked Global for a statement on this because you want to cover due diligence. Editor-in-chief Sonia Verma with Global News, who I've actually known for a long time from student newspaper days. She says Global News is governed by a rigorous set of journalistic principles and practices, and we are very mindful of the public interest and legal responsibility of this important accountability reporting. So I want to get their statement on the record. We see a lot of threats to sue. Han Dong's actually followed through with it. What do we make of this? What does this do to this whole thing?
Well, I mean, it sets in on a formal process down the road to a courtroom, doesn't it? And assuming that there is no settlement reached beforehand. But what it does is it lays out sort of specifically what damages to his reputation Han Dong feels he's suffered, and makes some pretty, I guess, sharp attacks on the journalism, the practice of the journalism, saying that that the news outlet used photos that out of context and that were, you know, not representative of what was going on. So look, there's some pretty serious allegations in there, and everyone who practices journalism knows that there are responsible journalism practices to follow when you're chasing a big story like this. And so I think, you know, there's still a lot that we don't know about this story and what the truth of the matter is, and whether or not, you know, that the sources of the story and the documents or any of that stuff that it's based on are actually solid. Right. And so that we'll see. I mean, it's a long way from a courtroom, but it's heading there. Yeah, Maria, the journalistic practices that Tonda talked about, the statement of claim spells out that, look, Global reported this, and the Globe and Mail published an article explaining why it did not report the same allegation. So it's interesting to see two media agencies not deliberately being put against each other, but by Han Dong and his legal team. Well, I think they were already not putting themselves against each other, but when the Globe came out explaining why they didn't publish these allegations themselves, and they went to the Prime Minister's office, and then because they hadn't heard the tape or read the transcript to have context and corroborate the accounting of what happened, they decided not to go ahead. So I think that opposition was already there. But yeah, the statement of claim does put those two in a particular situation. I don't know if it'll get to court. I mean, Patrick Brown did settle with the CTV, without actually going to court. Perhaps this is what will happen here. Because he wanted to seek the leadership, though. I think he needed to clear that debt. Yeah, and though Han Dong really seems to be very determined in this case. But I also think that these things might just keep happening. I remember being on this show, on this panel with these colleagues a few weeks ago, and we were saying this is going to or already turning into a witch hunt. More and more people are targets of allegations by media or others. More and more, I think people are going to want to defend themselves. And then I think the public is just left in a situation where, well, they don't necessarily know what to think when there's a counter-sue saying it's lies and a media outlet saying these are the allegations. It's just, I feel like it's going to get quite messy. Yeah, and on that, Nigan, Vincent Ka, who's the Ontario MPP, who's also been named in some Global reporting and is I don't know if he resigned from the Doug Ford caucus or was defenestrated from the Doug Ford caucus. He's served a libel notice. He's crowdfunding to pay for it. So it seems like the foreign interference reporting controversies and challenges are heading into a more legal arena here.
Yeah, there's two main issues that kind of arise to the surface. The first is the issue of intelligence overall and quoting intelligence by news agencies, because the problem is that when you start to quote intelligence, you can't say some basic journalistic principles around the source, around the verification, or share that with the public. So there's very little accountability in that way. And then those who are targeted or those who are accused then can use that against the news agency to say, well, show us the proof. And the fact is that, Global's coming out and saying, well, we can't share things on national security matters. And so that puts Global in a kind of risky position when you report on these issues. It's very tricky and takes a lot of due diligence, I guess I'll say, that if you're going to report on these issues around intelligence, and we've certainly been debating for a few weeks now on this very program, what is the merits of intelligence briefings? Are they a full story? Are they a partial story? I mean, they're called secrets for a reason, and secrets are always kind of partial, not quite complete, and we can't verify. So if the public can't hold these sources accountable, and the news agencies can't share, then it's obvious that there's really no choice, and it's quite a political benefit for those who are accused to then file libel suits.
Yeah, Emily, it's an interesting one, right? Like, I'm not a lawyer, but I look at this, and if you don't have the transcript and the recording about the allegations of the two Michaels, that seems to be the foundation of the libel suit, and others. The Globe has reported that the government's read this transcript and found nothing actionable. It seems a dilemma for me. I don't know enough about the legal workings of it, but I mean, what impact do you think this has on the whole foreign interference reporting?
So. First of all, there's a lot of libel lawsuits that are just an abuse of the legal system. They're just a way of doing intimidation. That it really isn't one of them, in my opinion. I'm really fascinated by this case, and I really hope that it's going to go through, because if there's a ruling on this, we're going to be learning a lot, I think, as journalists about why it was ruled a certain way or the other. And I hope that this case can make us, just either double down on our journalistic practices or start to doubt them, because essentially the issue of intelligence that and again was alluding to, is basically secondhand sources, right? So instead of speaking directly to an informant that we, check their validity and their worth, and immediately as journalists, that source speaks to SUES, and then SUES speaks to us, right? And so that's what happens. And so basically, I think there needs to be a reflection of what's the worth of secondhand sources, or whatever you might want to call it. But the idea of being 1 degree removed from the source of information and not being able to access the details about that is tricky in terms of journalism ethics. And this is, I think, if there's going to be more of those stories, something that is really worth thinking about beyond just that case. So I think that if that case can be used as a way to think about that, then I think it's going to be useful that it's put forward.
I think just to follow up on Emily's point, I think that the attempt to sue itself will run into the same problems that MPs are running into and that any public inquiry will run into. If Global is using classified information and secret information, are they going to be willing to put that out? Will that be challenged by the government in any court of law? And so getting at the truth of this story, whether it's in the context of a libel suit or an inquiry or a parliamentary hearing, is still difficult.
But Global wouldn't be bound by the Official Secrets Act, right? They've already published information that violates that.
The government could challenge the use of any of that information if they deem so, if they deem it to be security information, valid security information.
Marie, do you think any of this, the legal actions here, might put a chill on the reporting, might discourage reporters from taking more? You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Global doesn't seem too worried to me. In the statement of claim, one of the grievances of Han Dong's team is that they haven't retracted. All the stories are still on the website, on YouTube, or written stories as well on their website. So it doesn't seem to me like they're too worried about it. I mean, it might worry smaller organizations, perhaps, but I don't think so. I think that this whole file of foreign interference is so big, and people think that it's so important to get to the heart of it that I don't think that they will be deterred by this, especially because we don't actually know what's going to come of this lawsuit. Right. Maybe if there's a ruling, like Emilie says, and there are limits set in a decision, yes. But just the simple fact of threatening to sue or tabling a lawsuit, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We take a quick break. But coming up, a major investment in electric vehicle battery manufacturing in Ontario. The Power Panel is going to discuss the merits of that coming up next.